For everyone who's not been paying attention, the biggest story of this entire week, it's kind of funny, like James and I have been talking in the offseason, like, what are we going to talk about in these offseason pods? But it seems like every single week there's something huge coming on. Lamar Jackson just tweeted out randomly, hey, I requested a trade on March 2nd, which as of the taping today, that was almost 4 weeks ago now. And I want to trade away from the Baltimore Ravens for XYZ reasons. So Lamar has gone fully just rogue, doing whatever he wants. He doesn't have an agent telling him what to do. And so whatever happens, happens. And these negotiations have been super ongoing, even though he could potentially sign with another team right now. So, James, what was your immediate reaction whenever you saw that? I was at work, so I was just like, what the hell? But what did you think as soon as you saw the Lamar tweet?
Right. And before I get to that, I think we need to take a moment and appreciate the fact that Drew just said being a Ravens fan has been tough, even though they have 2 Super Bowls in the last, 15 or 20 years. Poor Matt or Matt, Mac, Luke, whatever we're going to call you for this episode. The Lions haven't won like a game in 50 years, I think, if that's the correct stat. So I think he's over here just like going like the not Hey Arnold, but the Arnold meme, like clenched fist, like shut up, Drew. Like you don't know pain.
Yeah,
Um,
someone tried to convince me the other day that being a Green Bay fan was a hard task. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
that one was hard to convince me of. So that's what I'm
But
basing that off of.
hasn't Green Bay won like the second most Super Bowls ever, like only behind the Steelers or something? That's terrible. But
I
to
think
be
it's
fair to Drew,
championships.
yeah,
Because Super
because
Bowls, it's the Patriots and Steelers at 6, the Niners and Cowboys at 5.
of course you know that stat off the top of your head, James.
Well,
Of
just
course.
mainly because of the Patriots part. So
Yeah. To be fair to Drew, though, he is a true Gen Z. He was born in 2000, so I think technically he missed that Ravens Super Bowl in 2000. So he's only seen one Ravens Super Bowl in
okay,
his lifetime.
The
But
blackout.
and I
still a
retract my
lot better than the
statement.
Lions with 0. So you're pretty much right.
Perfect. Yeah, with the Lamar news, honestly, I was just jacked. It's like finally we're juicing up F5 season because we started to really slow down. A lot of the free agents have been signed to this point, that we will talk here in a bit about who's left. Everything kind of slowed down for a bit. We were thinking, okay, maybe eventually we'll hear some Lamar contract news, right? Like a team offered him, a deal, or the Ravens finally got the deal done. And then it was just amazing with like Harbaugh being in the middle of a press conference. Lamar was like, now is the time to tweet, and decides to just go ahead and drop the bomb on him. As he's saying like, oh, I'm almost guaranteeing Lamar's our quarterback week 1, etc. Lamar's like, I want out. So I think it's just awesome. This is what NFL fans needed to just give them some life here, because baseball's coming up, and that's like the opposite of football when it comes to just like action packed sport. So this is what we needed.
Yeah, the timing was pretty incredible because it was also like a day after they signed Nelson Aguilar, and it's pretty damn funny that as soon as he saw that that was going to be his top tier weapon signing of the offseason, he's like, okay, I'm out. You guys aren't interested in meeting my value. You guys aren't interested in getting me some weapons. I'm gone. So, Drew, it's your time to shine. This is the entire reason you're on the podcast. What do you feel about with this whole situation? How do you feel about Lamar shitting all over the Ravens, basically saying, I don't want to be here? And do you think this is a leverage ploy, or do you think he like actually wants out?
I hate to disappoint, but I'm pretty indifferent on this whole thing, because I kind of see both sides to the issue. Lamar's being, he's an MVP. He's brought the Ravens to the Super Bowl, not Super Bowl, to the playoffs multiple times. I mean, he has a lot to back up his ask. Whereas the team, I mean, there's a lot of unknown here. He's a huge injury risk factor for that kind of money. It's just kind of it's a lot of money to give up for one position. So, but whenever I heard that news, I follow basically a Lamar meme page on Instagram, and I saw that he was potentially getting traded months and months ago to the Commanders, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's not going to happen. And then I see another. Well, I text Luke and like, oh, did this happen? And then we confirmed no. So I already had my initial feelings of like, oh shit, 2 months ago, and then now I saw on the same meme page it again, but it was Lamar's tweet. So that one was a little bit more set in stone, but like I said, kind of my initial reaction was just like, damn, he's a franchise quarterback. Don't get me wrong, but are you willing to give up, 40, 45 to 50 million a year for one position? Um, I think the Ravens have a pretty good idea of, their 3 to 5 year outlook, whether that's with Lamar or with one of these potential rookies coming in through the draft. Um, you know, like I said, I don't want to disappoint, but I'm pretty indifferent about it because I see both sides. I see the logic through and through, but I'm sure there's something happening behind the scenes that we don't quite realize, whether that's good or bad. Kind of like what James and I were saying before Luke got on. It could be something. It could be nothing, or it could be something crazy. So that was my initial take from it.
You
How
might have the most.
blessed
Go ahead, Jim.
So, how blessed do you feel knowing you have Pro Bowl backup Tyler Huntley ready to lead your charge next season?
I didn't mind him. Luke thought he was really bad. I didn't really mind him. I think he was kind of a true Raven, and that's kind of the sad part about Lamar potentially leaving is he is a true Raven in my mind. Full of class, full of grit. But then again, I had to question myself: was the move that he did to tweet about his former team or current team um, during a press conference with his head coach? I don't know if that's really defined as classy, but is Raven is the Ravens organization deemed as classy anymore because of how they treated Lamar? So two fair points to kind of bring to the table.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack here, right? So first off, you have the most measured take ever, which is the most typical Ravens fan thing ever. It's like Ozzie Newsome, we trust at all times. The Ravens always have this grand master Illuminati plan behind the scenes. We're going to let all these free agents go, and then we're just going to be able to still be good every single year. It's like Patriots light in a lot of ways. So not that surprised that that's your take. Also not surprised that that's your take, given that the best Ravens quarterback ever, Joe Flacco, is a free agent this offseason. You can just go grab him. Why would you ever need
I
Lamar?
agree.
I remember distinctly, Drew, whenever Lamar first started playing those like last 8 games of that one season a few years ago, and you like distinctly texted me, you're like, who is this guy? And can we please have Joe Flacco back? And
Yeah.
I was trying to explain to you, like, Lamar's the future. Joe's really fallen off. But Ravens fans, just like you, are still clamoring for the Joe Flacco
Well,
days.
hear me out. We won a Super Bowl with a pocket present quarterback. So if we were to get I don't know, like a Kirk Cousins for dirt cheap, would that be the most awful thing in the world? And then we spend some money on some receivers. I don't know. That'd be a different dynamic. That'd be a kind of a nice change for a fan. Like it's an interesting dynamic that they brought to the table with the running game, and teams are starting to copy that. But who knows the longevity in that because Justin Fields could get hurt tomorrow. Hurts literally got hurt. Um, and then there's one more thrown in the mix. I mean, Mahomes runs every once in a while, but he's a whole different story in my mind. So the running
I'll back you up
quarterbacks
on
are
this
coming.
one for that because Mahomes almost broke an ankle in the playoffs
Mhm.
just through scrambling. Trey Lance did break his ankle while doing like a QB sneak. Mahomes injured his knee a couple years ago on a QB sneak. I mean, Jimmy G isn't really a pocket or like a scrambler, but anytime he was moving, like that's how he broke his foot is he was stepping forward and got a guy to roll up on him. So to your point, yeah, anytime you put a quarterback in harm's way, you're asking for trouble. You're asking for more trouble when it's $55 million of guaranteed money every single year. And
Yeah.
I think that's probably the biggest point of separation, right? Is Lamar wants the Deshaun contract, and the Ravens are like, homie, you missed the last 8 games of the past 2 seasons. We cannot give you guaranteed money.
I think there's a lot of credence to what Drew is saying in terms of like having a pocket presence quarterback that's going to stay in the pocket and not roll out because the guy who they just brought in to be the architect of their offense is Todd Monken, the former offensive coordinator of the Georgia Bulldogs, who we just saw had a great 2-3 year run with Stetson Bennett, who is a pretty immobile quarterback. He has some wheels, but he's in all actuality, he's a pocket presence type of guy. So bringing in someone like honestly Kirk Cousins, if he were to get cut, which there are rumors of that potentially happening in the next year or so, could actually be a pretty good fit if you end up getting him for a cheap dollar amount, which isn't likely. However, I want to dispel a little bit of the Lamar Jackson constantly injured rumor. I had a little bit of time at work today. If my boss is listening, I had no time at work today. I was grinding for 9 straight hours, but
That's what I heard.
I was looking at the start percentages, the play percentages is more like it for NFL quarterbacks since 2018, which is when Lamar entered the league, right? So since 2018, when Lamar started being eligible to play games, he has played in 85% of available starts. So 85% out of the 16, now 17 game season. Looking at other quarterbacks, Deshaun Watson, 73%. Granted, there's extra stuff going on there. We look at some of the other guys here. Dak Prescott, 79%. Matthew Stafford, 80%. Jimmy G, 62%. Daniel Jones, who just got 40 plus million a year from the New York Giants, 82%. Kyler Murray, also 85%. Tua, 72%. And we want to put this giant like injury prone label on Lamar, but like he plays a good amount of games. And probably the most shocking of all of them, Joe Burrow has only played in 84% of available games in the NFL, which is still lower than Lamar. So I don't personally love this, oh, he's injury prone label. I think that they're two fluke injuries that just kind of turned into bigger things just because of how the team was going. They didn't want to keep suiting him up in week 17 if there's nothing really on the line, but also just like, hey, it's not worth jeopardizing our franchise quarterback. And like if you average it all out, like Josh Allen's only averaging one more start per season than Lamar Jackson. We don't call him an injury prone quarterback. And he also does the get outside the pocket thing. So I think it's an interesting narrative. I've seen a lot of people talking today because the Lions were a rumored team of going and getting Lamar. And Dan Campbell came out today and said, hey, we're not interested in Lamar Jackson. And I just think it's interesting that like that's always the go-to thing in all these message boards is Lamar's hurt, but like I just don't think that it's that big of a deal. What do you think, Jimmy D?
Well, I mean, you're bringing up great stats. I would say, aside from maybe the Josh Allen stat, the big issue there is when the team is so built around you the way the Ravens are, every absence is noticed. It's the same with Kyler. I'm sure people thought he was more injury prone than 85% of snaps, right? Like you'd think Dak is in more games than Kyler Murray. The problem is when you don't have Kyler Murray back there, it's very, very apparent when the Cardinals don't have him because of just how bad it is. Same thing happens with the Ravens. That offense just isn't the same. Huntley gets you 10 points in a game, 11 points, 12 points. Like they just don't move the ball the same way. And some of those other teams, a competent backup can step in and still make a pretty big difference.
I
Yeah.
I definitely agree with what James is saying. That's kind of the point I was going to bring up there. I'm a big numbers I'm a big numbers guy, don't get me wrong, but the stats don't really show kind of the importance the absence of Lamar really had for the Ravens because he missed some really important games. And last season, it would have been really nice to have him. Same with the season prior. So, I mean, for example, like J.K. Dobbins, you know how much of a difference he made to the team, even though he was just a small piece. He made a huge difference to the Ravens. Again, that's really biased from being a Ravens fan, but personally, I thought he made a big difference, and kind of Lamar's difference is very well known. Um, so, agree.
Yeah, but I feel like the failure for the team to like put a good team around Lamar Jackson isn't really Lamar's problem necessarily. And like obviously, yes, if they're starting to give him more money, then it starts being a little bit of his problem because you can't distribute as much money to other players, the salary cap, yada yada yada. But I just think that this injury prone narrative is just kind of bogus whenever you look at these percentages, right? And like he's playing at a percentage that is better than all these other franchise quarterbacks that we don't label injury prone. So I think that's an interesting narrative. I also think it's very interesting that all these other teams that have incredibly average quarterbacks are also injury prone are also just like, oh yeah, we're not that interested. Like 2 first round picks, not worth it for Lamar. So for example, like the Washington Commanders today, Ron Rivera, their head coach, came out and said, we're rocking with Sam Howell. We want this rookie or next year sophomore quarterback. We think that he's going to be next. Same thing in Atlanta. Arthur Smith, their head coach, came out and said, we like Desmond Ritter, sophomore quarterback coming off of only a handful of starts last year. We like what we saw. We're going to rock with them. Jimmy D, what do you think of these teams that are like unproven quarterbacks, this is going to be our guy versus going out and making a big splash and getting a guy like Lamar.
The coach has to say that because if you just like decimate the confidence of your sophomore quarterback, you're doing your team a giant disservice, right? Like if Arthur Smith comes out and is like, dude, Desmond is dog water. We want to get Lamar so bad, we just know we can't. It doesn't feel quite the same. So I think it's just that's classic coach speak, especially when they know they're not going to get him because the big issue is it's not just 2 first-round picks, it's 2 first-round picks. Oh, and you have to outbid the Ravens for Lamar.
That's also true. Drew, what do you think is an appropriate amount of money for Lamar Jackson on a per year basis?
If they can't get anything done, I still think he'd be getting overpaid with their 3 year like 133 million. I think north of 40 million is too much. I think right at his franchise tag amount is something that would be agreeable. Now, that's coming as a team perspective. Now, I'm sure he thinks he deserves a lot more, but in terms of longevity for the team, I would like to see something under 35 million a year, but I don't think he'll sign anything less than like 42. But he might just hold a grudge to the Ravens. Let's say if he does get signed by the Colts, because that's the biggest rumor, or traded for that matter. Then he might get 41 or 40 just to kind of shove it in Ravens' face at that point. But do I think the bridge is really burned? No, but it's burning. So
Yeah, you gotta be in a lot of pain if you're a Ravens fan because like this ambiguity is so tough right now. James, what do you think about this whole situation whenever you add the extra context of Aaron Rodgers still hasn't been traded to the Jets? The Packers are still trying to get as much as they can for Aaron Rodgers. Do you think that changes up any of the context here? Like, do you think the Jets try and swoop in and get Lamar? Do you think the Packers could potentially swoop in and get Lamar? How do you think that hurts their leverage as well if you're the Packers? Because now there's a second elite quarterback on the market.
I feel like these are honestly two mutually exclusive events right now. Maybe slightly rely on each other because the Jets could say, you know what, forget it. They're not meeting us halfway. The issue being the Jets can't really go make a play on Lamar because if they do and don't get him, then they're also probably not going to get Rodgers, right? So they're fully committed on the Rodgers train. It feels like at this point. So I think they have to pretty much just say no. We want Aaron. We're not even going to consider Lamar because if it gets out that they would never or they were unwilling to pay the price for Aaron after Aaron gave them kind of like the blessing to come and get him, which is sounds just douchey of me saying it for him, but he ends up just not playing for you because he found out on the back end you're going after Lamar. Like that's just a disaster scenario for the Jets.
Yeah, I just think it's very interesting that all these teams are like, oh, we don't want to piss off Jordan Love, so we're gonna keep around, just like not going after Lamar. It's like, do we really care that much about Jordan Love's feelings? Like, he'll get over it. Jimmy G got screwed over 5 times by the 49ers, and he got over it and just kept playing along. So I don't know. It's an interesting offseason. It's an interesting way to approach this whole Lamar situation. And I think I speak for everyone when we just like all want it to be over with because it's kind of exhausting just going through this every single day. So, Drew, if you had to predict, do you think Lamar will get traded before or after the NFL draft, which is on April 27th?
I predict neither. I don't think he will.
You don't think he'll get traded at all? You think he'll just go back to the Ravens?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone would really be willing to give him his price tag, let alone the 2 first round picks is really huge. I didn't even think about the possibility of him going to the Jets, like you guys have mentioned, but technically the Aaron Rodgers deal isn't done. And in my mind, if you're going to spend 40 million a year, let's say for 2 years for Aaron, you may as well spend that 45 million for Lamar and have him for another 3-5 years depending on the contract. So that's something I didn't even think about. So
Yeah. So, Drew, your predictions, he stays with the Ravens. What's your prediction right now, Jimmy D?
Yeah, I'm going to say it stays with the Ravens. I don't know who's going to make a play for him. So I think because he has said he asked for the trade, but plenty has come out that saying like, he's still negotiating in good faith with the Ravens. Though it's not like he's just completely cut it off. It's it's honestly reminiscent of Debo last year. Like, hey, I want to trade because they're not playing ball, and then all of a sudden, John Lynch stepped up and said, "All right, let's play ball."
Yeah, and then like it's just all good feelings after that, which is very strange. But I think also a lot of players nowadays realize like this is just business. This is just how it goes. I think my prediction as of right now is he gets traded to the Lions, which has been my prediction this entire time, ever since I started that rumor on that pod a while ago. I think that Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes and everyone else in Detroit is going to pull the exact same situation that happened in Arizona with Josh Rosen, where they were like, this is our guy. We're going to stick with him. And then they just pull the rug out from under him and go get somebody different. So that's my prediction right now. Jared Goff, they don't care about his feelings. He's got a hot wife anyway. He'll be good to go. So,
I mean, they didn't care about Jamal, so they'll do players dirty, I guess.
Exactly. So we could talk about Lamar for hours, but let's move on to other NFL free agency news.